Here's Ricky Meese.
A crash on southbound I-15 near 53rd, blocking a right lane and causing delays. One also still being cleared. State Street at 3300 South. The best kept secret is this is the pass. It's a pass for fun for everyone. Now through April 30th, save $20 off every annual pass level. 362 days of fun. Visit thisisthepass.com. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
Our KSL weather, cloudy with south winds today, high in the low 70s. Tomorrow, rain showers and then rain and snow showers on Saturday. And temperatures drop into the 40s for the weekend. 63 right now, mostly cloudy. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, you may remember on the show just a couple of weeks ago, we looked backwards in order to look forward. We looked at something that then candidate, he wasn't even a candidate yet, he was former Governor Ronald Reagan, did for a time capsule for 2076 coming along, and it was writing a letter to the future, which I think everybody should have to do at some point. Many of us did that in high school, try to project forward 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And that looking forward is always important. It requires a great deal of humility if you want to get it right. So let's start today thinking again about what we think we know about predicting the future. Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
I'll tell you, one of my favorite Think Again tag team partners over the years has been Jay Evenson, opinion editor for the Deseret News, and beautiful piece in Deseret.com talking about predicting the future. And Jay, as always, welcome back to the show. Great to have you in studio. And let's talk about this whole concept of predicting the future. What led you down this path for this piece?
Well, thanks, Boyd. I found a piece in a in a magazine called Saturday Review from 1974 that was predicting what life would be like in 2024, which I thought was fascinating. Of course, one thing they couldn't foresee is that Saturday Review would be out of business, but
different issue.
Different issue completely. But they gathered together some of the greatest minds of 1974 and had them predict. And, you know, it almost always goes in this direction, that we start talking about all the cool stuff we're going to have in the future. And Jacques Cousteau was talking about, you know, things we could do in the oceans, that the oceans would be pristine and clean, and we'd figure out how to get rid of pollution. Neil Armstrong talked about having developments on the moon, that type of thing. But I found a columnist, James Kilpatrick. We used to run him in the Deseret News years ago. And he said he didn't believe any of that because he said, we're going to mess things up in the future. And he, to quote from him, he said he'd be a lot more pessimistic about 2024. Is man essentially good, kindly, neighborly, self-sacrificial? Are nations wedded to the golden rule? I deny it absolutely. And it really got me thinking about it, because you can look back over 50 years. You can make an argument for either side of that equation. That things have been bad, things have been great.
Yeah, no question about it. And so I love one of the things you pointed out in your piece, and that is that there are always the Hitlers and the Putins that always emerge in history, and yet somehow, miraculously, there's always a Churchill, there's an Eisenhower that kind of corresponds to that.
Exactly, and that's the future is really the sum total of everybody's desires, morals, virtues, wishes that's alive today. And if it hadn't been for those indomitable optimists 50 years ago, we wouldn't have little computers in our pockets. You know, we wouldn't be doing such great things with medicine. We wouldn't have all the miracles that we have today. And yes, you can look back and you can look at all the horrible things that have happened over the last 50 years. But I think I really appreciate the optimists, because without them, we're not going to have a good future. And with them, I think there'll be all kinds of miracles and things happening.
Yeah, no question about that. And it's amazing looking back in that period in the 70s and where we were. Of course, there were a lot of international issues and problems going on, and problems with inflation and the economy and
gas crisis.
Gas crisis, all of the different things. And yet amidst all of that, there was something that was not heralded in any newspaper that actually probably shaped the future more than anything or anyone since. And that was two guys dropped out of college and started a little computer company.
Yes, Steve Jobs and Wozniak.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And that's always been the case throughout history. It's been the little-known things that we don't even know what's happening right now in somebody's garage or basement, and they're developing something that's going to completely change the world. That's the product of optimism, especially in a country that values innovation. I think the greatest barometer of how well we're doing is the number of patents that are issued every year.
Yeah.
And as long as those are strong, I think the future is going to be strong.
Yeah, no question. And actually, if you look back, I think it was 1820. I think they actually, there was a proposal to close the patent office in the United States because they said everything that can be invented has been invented.
How many times have we heard people say that throughout history, and yet we keep forging ahead with things that we have never even imagined, but at least one person has imagined.
Yeah, that's right. And that's all it takes is one person with a big idea, one person operating in what we like to call within the parentheses of a crazy idea as they launch a business or start a movement or an initiative. I want to go back to this statement that you just shared, Jay, about the future being the sum total of the collective thoughts, desires, and imaginations of everyone now living. That's so powerful to me. Unpack that for us a little bit.
Well, what it really says is that I say in here that predicting the future is a fool's errand because you're going to get it wrong pretty much. But what it says is that we actually control the future. We collectively decide what it's going to be, and we, I think, individually decide what it's going to be, at least short term. One of the things I find most dismaying is that the people I think who ought to be thinking about the future the most, our public officials, are often only thinking to the next election, and they ought to be thinking larger than that.
Yeah, no question. It is those that are thinking the most short term, win the election, keep the job, as opposed to those who have the bigger vision. I want to go back. I referenced Ronald Reagan's piece, and again, he used to do this every day. Every day he'd do about a 4-minute, 600-word little essay to the country in between the time he was governor and running for president. And he said he talked about the challenges that were facing the country: excessive spending, loss of individual liberty, things that we were losing in terms of the founding principles. Talked about the superpowers with missiles and nuclear weapons pointed at each other. And then he talked about this letter he's writing to the future. And he says, those who read my letter will know whether those missiles were fired or not. They'll either be surrounded by the same beauty we now know, or they'll wonder sadly what it was like when the world was still beautiful. And then I thought, in this really humble kind of way, he asked, will they read the letter with gratitude in their hearts for what we did? Or will they be bitter because the heritage we left them was one of human misery?
Yeah. Those are the questions that we all need to be asking ourselves. And it's one of the reasons why at the very end of my column, I ask, what do you think life will be like in 2074? And it's not just a throwaway line. I really want readers to think about that and answer that, spend time pondering it. And your answer to it says a lot about whether you're an optimist or a pessimist, but it also talks about what you really want to have happen.
Yeah, it is a fantastic exercise. Everybody should do it. Write a letter to the future, whether it's 2076 or 2124, 100 years out. Write a letter to the future. It'll cause you to maybe think again about what you think you know and about where you think we're headed individually and as a society. Jay Evenson, as always, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
We'll be right back.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson.
When the weather warms up, it's like a stampede, except instead of dust stirred up by hundreds of hooves, it's a cascade of phone calls to Advanced Window Products. This is Jeff Kaplan. Soon as the sun shines and the snow's gone, people want new windows and frames from Utah's #1 custom window maker, and the wait for installation grows longer. But right now, you can get near the front of the line by calling for a quote and get $2,500 off when you purchase 10 windows or more. That's on top of the incredible savings for the highest quality double-pane windows and frames, any style, any color. See, at Advanced Window Products, they actually build the windows here in Utah, they install the windows, and they guarantee them for life. There's no middleman, and they can pass the savings on to you. They even offer buy now, pay later. So get in before the wait grows longer and get the $2,500 off. Get your new windows this spring. Make the call. Advanced Window Products, 801-850-9100. That's 801-850-9100. Or visit advancedwindowsusa.com.
The crime tore a community apart.
Chad has much more likelihood of putting on a defense.
Can the judge and attorneys pick a fair jury?
The death penalty is going to be a huge part of this.
The trial of Chad Daybell, mornings and afternoons starting this week. Listen at home for the latest developments and in the car for updates from the courtroom here on KSL News Radio.
It's easy to think all money managers are pretty much the same, but at Fisher Investments, we're clearly different.
Different? How? You sell high commission investment products, right?
No, Fisher Investments doesn't sell any commission-based investment products.
Well, you must earn commissions on trades.
Nope, never at Fisher. We're a fiduciary, obligated to act in our client's best interest. It's the highest standard of care for a financial advisor.
How do you know what's in their best interest?
We get to know our clients and then tailor a portfolio based on their goals and needs.
But you probably sneak in some hidden and layered fees.
No, we have one transparent management fee, structured so we do better when our clients do better.
Wow, you really do look out for your clients.
That's because our top priority is helping them achieve a comfortable retirement. It might be why most of our clients come from other money managers. Visit FisherInvestments.com to find out why investors like you switch to us. Fisher Investments. Clearly different money management.
Investments and securities involve the risk of loss.
Attention, Dave's Bernina in Provo and St. George just finished a 3-day event in Vernal and is now offering these just out of the box, brand new Bernina machines at tremendous discounts with full warranties. Save thousands on the Bernina sewing, quilting, and embroidery, 735, 790, and 770 Cafe machines, featuring unmatched quality and ease of use. Many of these machines have special offers and come with free gifts with purchase. We also have a few L890 sergers and a sit-down Q16 quilting machine. Hurry in, quantities are limited. All other exciting Bernina machines in our stores are on sale too. Plus, we'll have discounts on Bernina accessories and zero-interest financing options. Come to Dave's Bernina now at 691 East St. George Boulevard and 2017 North 550 West in Provo while supplies last. Dave'sBernina.com.
Jazz fans, secure your seats for the next NBA season by getting season tickets. Season ticket members get special perks like team store discounts, savings on in-arena concessions, and more. Be there for every moment during the 2024-25 season by calling or texting 801-355-DUNK today. 801-355-DUNK. Let's go, Jazz.
The KSL News Radio Movie Show comes to My Hearing Centers this Friday from 10 to 1. But first, discover what My Hearing Centers can do for you. My Hearing Centers uses advanced technology to diagnose and treat hearing loss. These comprehensive evaluations determine the best treatment options. Then enjoy lifetime support with regular check-ins, cleaning, and maintenance. Call My Hearing Centers at 801-701-1629. 801-701-1629 for more details. My Hearing Centers has offices from Ogden to St. George.
Tim and Amanda.
I don't want to be in the dark about things. I'm sure you don't either, Tim. I mean, I want to know what's going on with the weather. Are my kids safe? You know, where is my money going? I want to be informed.
Yeah, the truth is, it's important information for you and your families to make sure that you are informed so that if some changes are necessary in your life or your children's life, you can make them by listening and starting your morning with us here on KSL.
Wake up with Utah's Morning News with Tim and Amanda, 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, the president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints urged listening to this weekend's General Conference sessions with an open mind. In a Facebook message, President Russell M. Nelson also said he's grateful to still be around, even as he approaches his 100th birthday. Second, another Utahn has been arrested on charges related to the January 6th Capitol riot. And third, downtown Salt Lake City could be the venue for some outdoor competition during the Olympic Games in 2034. 63 degrees right now in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Get deeper insights on the news from Inside Sources.
Well, part of the Biden administration's economic strategy, combined with a little bit of political strategy, seems to be leaning in hard towards industrial policy. The government gives subsidies, tax breaks, more money to corporations to encourage them to take on projects the government finds favorable, and in the process could create thousands of jobs for the American worker. Everyone benefits. Is it really working? Does it really work as a strategy? And while we often talk about reforms to welfare, corporate welfare is another one, and industrial policy might be part of some of the reforms needed there. We want to dig into this a little bit deeper, and always thrilled to have joining us on the program Veronique Derougy, contributing editor at Reason. She's a senior fellow, a research fellow at the Mercatus Center at George Mason University as well, and a great piece at Reason.com today. And Veronique, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me back.
So as we look at these, particularly as we focus on the manufacturing companies that are getting some of this, I like to call it corporate welfare. You can call it whatever you want in terms of money coming from the government. Just kind of break that down for our listeners first in terms of how does this play out, and then we'll get into some of the ramifications.
Well, so if I assume, I don't know if your listeners know, but as part of a big grand strategy for semiconductor and green energy, the Biden administration and Congress have authorized between $1.2 trillion. That's what was authorized, but effectively the cost may be $1.8 trillion or $2.1 trillion in domestic subsidies. Again, to manufacturing in sectors such as green energy, semiconductor. There's some broadband, but that's not the majority. And a lot of the arguments for these, right, apart from national security arguments that we're going to be bringing back, companies here and have a domestic production of EVs and of semiconductor in the U.S., there's this argument that it's going to create many, many jobs in manufacturing, and that is a good thing, right? That's the argument for all of these subsidies. The subsidies are direct payments, they're tax credits. They take many forms like loan guarantees and stuff like this. And basically, what I write is it's very, very unlikely to work the way it's promised, especially on the job front.
Yeah, and I think that's such an interesting thing to look at how it works out downstream as this plays out. It is lots of money that has been allocated, as you said, 1.2 to 2.1 trillion in terms of those subsidies. And so kind of play the next phase of that out for us. Again, politicians love to say, hey, we're bringing all these jobs to this city or that city, and that always sounds really good. In the end, is that really what they're delivering? And in the end, do they also end up creating more problems in some of these markets rather than benefits?
Yeah, so for instance, during the State of the Union, the president talked about all of the spending that he had managed to get from Congress, and he argued that this was going to create hundreds of thousands of jobs in manufacturing, especially for non-educated workers. And it's not going to work. I mean, and there are a variety of reasons that people tend to forget about. The first one is even if the spending were to create a boom in manufacturing, even if the incentives that are given to companies to start building factories here in the U.S. that they weren't planning on building already, it's not going to create an employment boom in manufacturing. And the reason is that our manufacturing today is highly automated. So most of the jobs that are going to most of what the job would actually be automated.
Yeah.
The other thing is that because of the nature of manufacturing today, it's not the 50s and the 60s anymore. There's just a lot of these jobs, apart from building the fabs, right, and the factories. A lot of those jobs are actually they're highly skilled jobs. So it's a lot of bachelor degrees, but also even more like PhDs and different science background. So it's not going to deliver. I mean, it's to the extent that some people may get employed, it's not going to be at the level of education that people think.
Right.
And in fact, you can see it right now. A lot of these factories that are, and a lot of these companies like that, that are trying to make semiconductors. I mean, they're suffering from tremendous labor shortage.
Right.
And it's not surprising. I mean, our unemployment rate is 3.9, right? And to the extent that a lot of people on the right, for instance, they're concerned about men who have dropped out of the labor force, right? These guys are not lining up for these jobs because ultimately these are high-skilled jobs. And according to a report I saw today, the manufacturing sector thinks that they're going to suffer a shortage of 3.8 million jobs in the future. And in large part, it's because even though we have a labor force that's really high skilled, there just aren't that many people who want to work in manufacturing anymore.
Yeah. All right. Now I want to get to the piece of your writing today that I think should be chiseled in granite and say forever, and that is, when the government is in the business of distributing favors, corporations devote less effort to producing and more time to seeking those favors. And the result is unproductive entrepreneurship. So just describe that quickly for us, because I think that's where crony capitalism comes into play, and I think it inhibits innovation and the kind of direction we need in the country.
Yeah, so effectively, right, what the spending ends up being is a subsidy for corporations, and corporations that are not only large corporations, but often corporations that had already planned on doing what it's now being subsidized to do. For instance, in the Inflation Reduction Act, half of the project had been announced before the bill had even been passed, right? But these guys are happy to pocket the subsidies. And on like tax subsidies alone, my friend Adam Michel at Cato said it roughly there's about $1.8 trillion, like say, in subsidies and tax breaks. So it's cronyism. And the problem with cronyism, apart from shifting resources from unsubsidized areas to subsidized area, what really it does is like you want to maintain those subsidies. So, for instance, like Intel right now, right, is already an enormous beneficiary. I think Intel has already secured over $5 billion in subsidies through the CHIP Act and various tax credits. Well, Intel is already saying that we're going to need another CHIP Act. We're going to need more subsidies. And that means that basically those companies become really, they turn a lot of their attention towards Washington.
Right.
And delivering what Washington, and it's also because the subsidies are geared toward a particular type of semiconductor in this case, right? Mm-hmm. That's what they're going to shift their activities doing.
Yeah.
Opposed to doing what the market is requiring.
Yeah.
And also because the subsidies said you should do it in a particular place with particular employees, right? Yep. There's a lot of energy and time and money spent and geared towards actually satisfying the conditions for the subsidies as opposed to consumers.
Yeah, and that is just part of that whole vicious cycle. This is a great analysis. This should be must reading for everyone today, because it is what is inhibiting that kind of innovation and real entrepreneurship that we've got to have in the country. Veronique Derougy, contributing editor at Reason, senior research fellow at the Mercatus Center at George Mason University. As always, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, we'll step aside for some bottom of the hour news. That is just great analysis in terms of what happens when government is picking winners and losers and playing corporate welfare. It never works out well for the people who it's supposed to be helping it with jobs and real opportunities. We'll be right back.
It's 1:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top local story this hour. The man facing 10 felony charges in Salt Lake County for intentionally running over a woman with his car, now being linked to a case in Summit County. KSL legal analyst Greg Skordas tells David Dujanovic this is such a strange string of crimes, not surprising it took this long for police to link one suspect to all of them.
It's no surprise that law enforcement was sort of treating each episode as kind of a one-off and saying, well, this is unfortunate, it's tragic, and not necessarily coordinating with other agencies who have had similar, almost exact scenarios.
Anfam is currently in police custody. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. After speaking to the Prime Minister of Israel today, President Biden is signaling what could be a change in U.S. policy toward Israel. Biden urged Israel to take steps to address the civilian suffering in Gaza caused by the war with Hamas. The president has strongly criticized the attack that killed 7 aid workers in Gaza earlier this week. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average down on the day, 485 points right now. The NASDAQ is down 186. And our KSL weather, things are getting cloudy, windy today, and then they'll get a little rainy tomorrow. That's next. KSL News Time, 1:31.
News doesn't just mean information or dates.
It's the story of our local history being told in real time.
Be a part of the story. This is Tim Hughes and Amanda Dixon.
We hope to be a part of your story. We have you covered on KSL News Radio.
Steve, it's becoming one of the worst kept secrets in the Salt Lake Valley, and that's what is NPS?
Yes.
And that's a great place to go save money.
And we've gotten a lot of flack about it, but sorry, we kind of want to share with everyone what great savings are available at the 4 different locations of NPS in Utah.
Yeah, so they sell groceries at NPS, they sell merchandise at NPS, and they have industrial items at NPS. Just depends on where you go, but they're competitive on the groceries. They'll beat your price at the grocery store on just about anything.
And everything else is 30 to 70% off, so you can't go wrong with that.
No, and it's 30 to 70% off retail, and they're brand new items. That's the thing we have to make sure you understand. And then every once in a while, they'll do sales that they'll put another 30, 50% off of those to where you're paying a fraction of what you'd pay at retail stores.
I love the industrial store because it's kind of a discovery for me.
Yeah, that's in Salt Lake. It's 1600 South Empire Road. They've also got locations in Layton, 1150 North Main, and Orem, 475 North State. NPS.
When it comes to your electrical system, do you know the warning signs to look for? What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Wilson with Any Hour Services, and it's okay if you don't know, but here are a few things that you might not even realize could be a sign of a bigger problem. Wall plates that are hot to the touch, discoloration around switches or outlets, if you hear crackling or popping or buzzing around switches or outlets, a breaker that trips a lot, switches that feel loose when you operate them, if your lights dim or flicker when a major appliance comes on, if your plugs fall out of the wall easily. You know, you're not supposed to have to bend the prongs out on a plug just to get it to stay in the wall. If you notice any of these things, you should consider having a licensed electrician check your system out. If you don't know anyone, Any Hour Services has put together a radio-only special for any homeowners listening. One of our licensed electricians will perform a comprehensive electrical inspection and give you a full written report for only $29. But you have to mention this ad when you call. To schedule your comprehensive electrical inspection by a licensed electrician for only $29, call Any Hour Services at 801-443-7300. That's 801-443-7300. Any Hour Services.
Advertising used to be simple. Your options were radio, TV, newspaper, and let's not forget the yellow pages. Now it seems like a tidal wave of options. Podcast, cable TV, streaming, OTT, CTV, audio networks, smart speakers. On top of that, you need digital marketing for your website along with SEM, SEO, display, video, YouTube, email, and all the social media platforms. Look, you're the expert in your business. Wouldn't it be nice to have an expert to market you? We are Bonneville Salt Lake, the local marketing and media company you know and trust. We reach customers across all digital and social platforms and have the reach of traditional advertising available as well. We find your customer anytime, any place, anywhere on any device here in Utah or anywhere in the world. We work to optimize your results with our in-house local team of experts, providing you with qualified leads, not just impressions. Contact Stephanie Palmer at KSL for a free consultation, including a complete digital audit with no obligation or cost to you. Email spalmer@ksl.com. That's spalmer@ksl.com.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meese.
A crash in Draper. It's at the bottom of the on-ramp to northbound I-15 at 114th South on the right. Get Mr. Mac's Performance Missionary Package, including 1 performance suit, 4 end collar stretch shirts, 3 ties, 1 mission belt, 1 pair of Echo or Johnston & Murphy shoes, just $595. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
Our KSL weather, cloudy with south winds today and a high in the low 70s. Look for rain showers tomorrow with rain and snow on Saturday. Then temperatures drop into the 40s for the weekend. Right now, 64 degrees, mostly cloudy. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com for Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
2 friends taking pictures of the rising full moon on a summer night.
2 teenage kids doing what teenage kids do.
When a stranger with a gun and a death wish changed everything.
It was violent, it was senseless, and I will never understand it. I will never accept it.
I'm Amy Donaldson, and unfortunately, we're all too familiar with stories about how violence shatters lives. But what we rarely see is how they are rebuilt. In a new podcast, The Letter, we relive tragedy, but only so we can hear the rest of the story. The struggle to reclaim lives, the realities of grief, and the possibilities of forgiveness.
I believe in miracles. Sometimes I thought, there are no miracles. Yeah, there are, and this is a big one.
Follow The Letter at theletterpodcast.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, every day we get a little closer to November, and Americans are getting more exhausted and exasperated with their choices for who will lead the nation as president. Perhaps most notably, all eyes seem to be on some of the youngest of voters. And despite Gen Z's impressive turnout in 2020, their despondence this election cycle is making us wonder if they'll show up at the polls at all. Some people call in Democratic negligence. Gen Z is the consequence of so much government action and inaction. And we want to take a look at what are the young voters thinking about, where are they positive, where are they worried, where are they frustrated, and where are they just downright disconnected. And someone who always helps us break that all down and connect all of those dots, it's always a good day when we can have Samuel Abrams back on the program, non-resident senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, currently a professor of politics and social science at St. Lawrence College as well. And Sam, welcome back to the show.
A pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
So first, just give us a state of the young nation as you interact with your students. What is it that you're hearing as they're watching the presidential race in particular play out?
You know, it's not good. And I usually come on and I have something positive to say. And I feel terrible saying that. One thing that struck me in your introduction that's worth saying is you said, all eyes are focused on what younger people are doing. I think folks like you are interested. I think folks like me, I think your listeners, we're interested. One of the issues is it sure as heck doesn't look like the parties are all that interested. It doesn't look like Donald Trump, who's the presumptive nominee on the right, and Biden on the left, are paying any attention to our young people right now. And they know it. They can see it. They can feel it. So if you want to talk about a disconnect and why they feel so despondent, that's a big part of it. Neither party, left or right, is reaching out to this group, is mobilizing this group. And between that and the fact, as we've talked about many times, the complete erosion and decline of institutions, whether it's church or community or schools and so on, Gen Zers today are feeling completely lost and disconnected. And it's really hard to say it, but I also don't want to pretend that it's not happening.
Yeah, and it's so fascinating to me because in past election cycles, it's usually the myth of the young voters are going to show up, and will they or won't they? But now, as young voters are talking amongst themselves, they're saying, I don't think I'm going to show up because of that very disconnect that you just described. Neither Republicans nor Democrats are putting forward anything that gives them a connection point. You've written a lot about the American dream, and obviously a lot of those Gen Z folks are feeling disconnected from that as a possibility, and they don't feel like they have institutions or or elected officials or leaders that can help them get there.
Sadly, I have to agree, and that was not the case about a decade ago when we were looking at the millennial wave, where they did see a path forward. Gen Zers do not see a similar path here. When many of them see the path forward as being a social media influencer, that's a problem. That does not bode well for our civil sphere, our communities at large. And to me, the Republican Party under Trump has not done a great job mobilizing whatsoever. That's nothing new. I think the bigger opportunity squandered, whether you agree with Biden or not, or the Democrats or not, is the fact that the younger folks did turn out in pretty high numbers in the last election cycle. They were mobilized. They were ready to go, and they weren't tapped. They're standing there. They're sitting there ready to go. They're engaged, and no one engaged them. And to me, that, again, whether you like the left or not, to me that was just an amazing opportunity squandered, and it was sitting right there. So unfortunately, as of today, and a lot can change, obviously, between now and November. One of the only truisms that I am completely certain of is that a week is an eternity in politics, and really the world could look very different come November.
Yeah.
But as held today, my students and students around the country are not going to engage.
Oh, that is so fascinating. And I do want you to know that you completely devastated the entire production booth when you burst their bubble that that they can't be influencers today. But maybe they'll get back to that later. Maybe they'll keep listening to the show. We'll get them there. And so as you look at this, and I totally agree, it's a lifetime away. But currently they are disconnected, and it's one of the. I want to go back to what you said about what the Democrats missed, because they did show up for President Biden, and he really needs them now, and yet their support for President Biden is really gone underwater now. And the fact that no one has invited them, Democrat or Republican, have invited young people to be part of something, to be part of a story, to be part of a movement, to be part of changing the country. Is there any path, or is there anyone out there who's going to say, hey, I'll tap you and I'll take you, and you can be part of something different?
Yes. So, we do see this in other parts of the country, but it's in smaller levels. We see it in cities, we see it in counties, we see it in certain states. But on a national level, we're not seeing it. Incidentally, one of the big things we are seeing that's worth mentioning is we are seeing a gender gap emerge. And this is something that is shocking a lot of people, incidentally, where men are now moving heavily into the Republican category. Women are moving heavily into the Democratic category. And that also, incidentally, lines up with religiosity and religious attendance and interest, where suddenly men, again, are moving to the right and are interested in going to church, synagogue, what have you, and women are not. So that is something else that's just incidentally in the background of all of this that's worth mentioning that is playing out. But no, on a local level, we see some of it. But, despite social media and the capacity to connect, despite the capacity to organize, and the fact that it's easier today in many respects than it ever has been, certainly easier than the big movements in the 60s, this generation cannot organize collectively either. And that's fascinating to see. So on one hand, we can blame the older politicians. We can blame folks like Biden, and there is something to be said for that. He does hold quite a bit of accountability here. At the same time, this younger cohort is not stepping up and organizing by itself either, and that's something of note.
Yeah, and do you think that is fascinating to me? I hadn't thought about it in that way. This is why we always have you on the show. Their inability to organize, is that partially because they've grown up with digital devices, and so they don't have to go out and round up 6 kids so you can play some 3-on-3 basketball or do something at the park? Or where's the disconnect?
Right. Exactly right. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to mention it, because with KSL and the wonderful listener base you have, it's a real community. You see each other on the ground. You see each other in church. You see each other in your physical communities. Younger people don't do that. They don't know how to do it. They have not been socialized to do it. And clicks and virtual engagement is not the same thing as real engagement on the ground. Certainly not the same as actually voting and mobilizing voting in the real world. We don't vote through, Twitter. We don't vote through TikTok. We vote in voting booths. So, in many respects, the skill sets that older generations had to develop because it was tangible in the real world has faded away thanks to the change in social media. Right now, there's a ton of attention being spent on social media about all the negative effects, how it harms people mentally. That's all true. But there's a civic component of it as well. And this is what we've wrought, and it's very, very dangerous. And again, I'm sorry for being so negative. This shift has occurred pretty rapidly in the last couple of years. It looked very different 4 years ago.
Yeah, no question. Well, we're going to end positive because I know that's where you always land anyway. And that is just in our last minute. So I think, to me, this is the call to the older generation to lead, to invite, to include, and to the younger generation to step up and engage. And so give us something that we can look at, or a model. How do we get back to this civil society, this civic connection, the interconnectedness? Because I think there's some natural inclinations in the young people, but as you said, they just haven't been tapped or taught.
So we talk about a crisis of loneliness in this country among older people and younger people. In fact, younger people regularly show that they're more lonely and disconnected. This is a fairly easy fix. This means talking to your neighbor. This means going to things in your community. This means reconnecting. And I think face-to-face reconnection could lead to, a rebirth, a renaissance, if you will, of local institutions, and then all the other positive things that go along with it. People will have lower mental health issues. People will not feel as lonely or isolated, and they're going to be more civic and community focused. This is really easy. It's put down your phones and go talk to somebody. It could do the world, it could do a world of good.
Yeah. Sam Abrams, non-resident senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, professor of politics and social science at St. Sarah Lawrence College, and Sam, as always, awesome perspective. We're going to have you back because we're going to solve this problem. We're going to do it on this show, and we're going to do it together.
I'd be happy to, anytime.
All right. That's Sam Abrams. Thanks again for joining us. We'll step aside for a quick break. More Inside Sources coming up next on KSL News Radio. Stick around.
KSL Broadcast Group contests are open to participants 13 years of age and older that are residents of Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, and Nevada, unless otherwise specified. Employees or agents of the station, Bonneville International Corporation, or other area radio stations, or any entity associated with the contest may not enter. Persons who have won in the last 90 days from a station contest or event are not eligible. Full general contest rules are available at kslnewsradio.com.
Looking for a secure retirement plan without market risk? Look no further. Lyle Boss, president of Boss Financial, specializes in no market risk retirement strategies with guarantees of principal, guaranteed growth, and lifelong income. Join Lyle right here each Saturday and Sunday for his Safe Money radio show, and call him now at 855-355-SAFE for your complimentary customized Safe Money information kit and Safe Money book. Nothing but upside here at 855-355-SAFE.
Drivers who switch and save with Progressive could save hundreds, which could be life-changing. I mean, you could put that money towards that zero-turn lawnmower you've always wanted. And after using its edge-shaping technology to meticulously sculpt the face of the Mona Lisa into your grass, you'll become the undisputed king of Saturday morning lawn care, leaving your neighbor and sworn enemy Gary to question his place in the delicate neighborhood ecosystem. And it's all because you could save money switching at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, not available in all states.
For the ones who work hard to ensure their crew can always go the extra mile, and the ones who get in early so everyone can go home on time, there's Grainger, offering professional-grade supplies backed by product experts so you can quickly and easily find what you need. Plus, you can count on access to a committed team ready to go the extra mile for you. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
You wouldn't know it, but most financial advisors are put in a box. I'm Jeff Jr. from Trajan Wealth, and I want to provide you a little insight about financial advisors. Most financial advisors have to sell what their company requires them to sell, and many advisors have to only adhere to what's called a suitability standard. A suitability standard is a limited standard of care, not requiring what's sold to be best just suitable. Advisors with this loose standard often have limited investment and product selection. Trajan Wealth is held to a fiduciary standard, which is the highest standard of care in the advisory business. And that's just one of the many reasons we have billions of dollars under our care and attract clients from other advisors. Raise your standards today and call Trajan Wealth. Call 801-899-7600. That's 801-899-7600.
Advisory services offered through Trajan Wealth, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bonas. First, a man accused in 10 hit-and-run incidents in Salt Lake County, now suspected in a similar case in Summit County. Second, President Biden could be signaling a new approach to Israel after a conversation today with Prime Minister Netanyahu. And third, Maine getting clobbered by a heavy winter storm, 300,000 people there without power. 64 degrees, mostly cloudy in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Well, this weekend, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints will broadcast the 194th Annual General Conference. KSL will be broadcasting all sessions, as always, so you'll want to stay tuned even after the sessions end, because we have exclusive news stories and content for all of you all weekend long. We've got you covered. So what do you need to know for General Conference weekend? Nobody better to talk about that with than Sarah Jane Weaver, who's the executive editor of the Church News. And Sarah, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Boyd.
Hard to believe we are back to another General Conference of the Church. These 6-month windows seem to just go by in a heartbeat. And here we are once again. And the Church has had a very busy 6-month period. And you've witnessed and watched and reported on so much of that. And you actually have a special that will feature a portion of what happened with the Tabernacle Choir and their trip to the Philippines.
Yeah, so much has happened in 6 months. You can calculate the growth of the church by temples and by humanitarian work. And one of the most significant things in this period was this trip the Tabernacle Choir took to the Philippines.
And let's go to a little bit of sound. You actually sat down with the president of the choir, Mike Levitt. Of course, most people recognize that name as former governor and former HHS secretary in the Bush administration, and now president of the choir. Let's take a quick listen to your conversation with Mike Levitt about that trip to the Philippines.
This is a worldwide tour, and the primary objective of ours is to carry a message of hope in Jesus Christ. And I don't know many countries around the world where that is a more important, or may I add, more welcomed message than the Philippines. The story of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in the Philippines is a miracle. And I think what we came away from this experience understanding is that the miracle is just beginning. And having the capacity now for the choir to join in that miracle and help propel it into a new orbit so that people will look back and say, that was a milestone on the history of a miracle in the Philippines.
Just the beginning of a miracle. That's a pretty bold statement.
Well, isn't that a really beautiful statement? The church just is very, very young in the Philippines, going back to the early 1960s. Just a few years ago, I was in the Philippines when Elder Neil L. Anderson of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles created the 100th stake of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints there. And it is very much established now. More temples have been announced there. And for President Levitt to say, hey, this is just the beginning for this nation, what a remarkable thing.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. So you can listen to that special. It's called Hope in the Philippines. That will air here on KSL News Radio at 7:30 p.m. on Saturday. So right after the evening session of the General Conference, you can listen to Musical Hope in the Philippines. The Tabernacle Choir continues their world tour, and Sarah Jane Weaver will walk you through all of that. And that's just a powerful thing. There's so many wonderful stories within that, so everyone can tune in to that. And I kind of want to play off of that in terms of the miracles. There are a lot of miracles that just happen day to day as the church goes about doing good in communities all around the world. We noted that just a few weeks ago, the humanitarian report for the church was issued. Give us an update on that.
Well, this was a most remarkable report because it signified some of the most or the highest level of giving in church history. And the church offered $1.36 billion to those in need in 2023. Now, that is really remarkable because none of that money goes in any way to any administrative fees. This is all direct money to those in need. But the numbers I like, the ones that I think reflect even more of what's happening, in that same time period, Latter-day Saints offered 6.2 million hours that were volunteered. And those services were rendered in 191 countries, and there were more than 4,000 humanitarian projects.
Wow, that is just a miraculous number, a stunning number, both in terms of the dollars and cents. And I'm like you, the dollars and cents are breathtaking in terms of that direct aid. And again, I think that's so important that it is that direct aid going to those in need, providing that relief. But the hours and hours that are donated just by individuals in big cities and small communities all around the world.
Just people showing up and doing their best and beautifying parks, and you times each of those individual hours times 6.2 million, and that's a beautiful force for good.
Yeah, that's an amazing, really is an amazing thing. It's also been an interesting 6 months in terms of some of the actions that the church has taken in terms of acquiring some historic properties, including Kirtland, Ohio. Give us a little perspective there as you've watched that play out.
Yeah, so just last month, leaders of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints announced that they had acquired the Kirtland Temple. This is a really, really beautiful stewardship that they're happy to carry on and preserve the legacy of that temple, which signifies early Latter-day Saints' efforts to build a temple city. And the community of Christ has cared for that site for a number of years, and I think everyone is so grateful for the care that the temple has received, and now everyone's looking forward to a time when we can go there and tour, and that site will be accessible and preserved well into the future.
Yeah. We say, I think it was Winston Churchill who said, we shape our buildings and then our buildings shape us. And I think a lot of those historic sites in Kirtland, also acquiring some in the Nauvoo area, along with documents. And I actually just real quickly, because you and I both know that President Nelson talks about going through doors. And we know that one of the artifacts that was acquired was the door to the Liberty Jail.
Yeah, and that is so significant. I was with Elder Quentin L. Cook a few years ago when he stood in Liberty Jail and testified of what happened there and the trials that Joseph Smith went through when he was imprisoned there. And I think what a beautiful thing that now that door is being preserved as a major church artifact.
Yeah, such an amazing thing. Just in our last minute, Sarah Jane, as you start looking forward, I thought it was brilliant today, social media post by President Russell M. Nelson talking about the fact that he is almost 100, but inviting everyone to come, recognizing that most people will participate, not here in downtown Salt Lake City, but over airwaves and through digital devices all around the world.
Well, and President Nelson announced on social media today that we may see some people looking a little different at conference just because of the age of senior leaders. We now have an entire First Presidency that are well into their 90s. President Nelson is anticipating later this year his 100th birthday. And he said, look, the time has just flown by, and we keep working even though we're well beyond retirement age. And to me, that just means that what they say is even more meaningful.
You really do get down to the essence of things when that time becomes all too precious. And I love the way he said that, there are creaks and and cracks, and standing up and moving in seats gets a little more difficult. But the spirit of the mission and the reality of what they're trying to produce just doesn't change. And such a powerful visual. I think it was a great way to kick off that general conference weekend, starting just here on Saturday morning. Sarah Jane Weaver, executive editor of the Church News. Watch for the specials. There's also another special that you're a part of, BYU Hawaii, celebrating the school's vision of intercultural peace and unity. And then, of course, the musical Hope in the Philippines. That will be Saturday evening at 7:30 p.m. Well, that wraps it up for hour number one of Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. We'll step aside for some top of the hour news, but don't go anywhere. Hour number two is coming up next. We'll be right back.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
It's 2 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top story this hour, the Utah Attorney General's office says a bar that posted a notice saying it would not serve Zionists did not discriminate against Jewish customers or anyone else. At the same time, it's urging the Weathered Waves Six Sailors Cider Bar to reconsider its statements that it will not serve patrons expressing certain beliefs. The Oakland A's are officially going to Sacramento, and that clears the way for the Salt Lake Bees to use the new Daybreak Stadium next season. KSL News Radio's Jessica Lowell has details.
The Oakland A's were reportedly considering Utah for a temporary stadium while they built one in Las Vegas. The Larry H. Miller Company says they were interested in the new stadium in Daybreak that will soon be the home of the Salt Lake City Bees.
In a statement, the Larry H. Miller Company says the A's were tied to California because of an existing TV contract. They say they're still committed to bringing an MLB expansion to Salt Lake City in the future. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. Heavy, wet snow and strong winds have knocked out electricity to more than 300,000 homes and businesses across Maine, part of a nor'easter that will be felt in New England into Friday. Some areas, strong winds are keeping bucket trucks from getting up in the air to fix those power lines. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average down now 529 points on the day. The NASDAQ is down 228. And our KSL weather, looks like clouds building up today and the rain comes in tomorrow. That's next. KSL News Time 2:01.
You know what's great about KSL's traffic coverage? Trained traffic reporters and real listeners.
Trading information and making the commute safer and faster for everyone.
Every 10 minutes on the nines, we have you covered on KSL News Radio.
You know, it's hard to believe that Dee and I have now been living in our new house for about 9 years now. You know, the thing that has really surprised me is how many appliances we have had to have work on and even replace. You know, the one that we haven't replaced, haven't done any work on at all, have not had a minute's trouble with, it's the Connecticut soft water system. And it's so interesting because when we were building the home, the builder said, okay, well, what do you want for a water softener? And I just interrupted. I said, wait, we're going to go with Connecticut. And they just smiled at me like, yeah, we know about Connecticut. Never once have we had an issue with our Connecticut soft water system, not only in our new home, but in our previous home as well. It just sits there in the basement, does its job, does it so much more efficiently than any other soft water system out there on the market today. Why don't you give them a call, 801-576-8600, or go to softwaterutah.com.
Derek Overstreet, founder of the New Millennium Group. We're a financial planning firm. Listen, we're fiduciaries. We have advisors standing by right now to take your call. That's 888-999-6370. 888-999-6370. The reason you're going to want to call is we're going to help you retire 3 to 5 years before you thought possible. Now, imagine how that would be if you could actually retire 3 to 5 years sooner than your plan was. The way we do this is by putting together a step-by-step plan, taking into consideration any rental properties that you have, any pension income that you have, your Social Security. Listen, we put that all together for you in writing. It will allow us to build your income based on inflation. You know, inflation has been rapidly rising. You and I both need a plan that whatever we start out our income at, in 5 or 10 years, we're going to need 40% more income. So if you're one of those people listening and you'd like a plan in writing, give us a call at 888-999-6370. That's 888-999-6370, or go to utahsfinancialplanner.com.
Real Salt Lake's 2024 campaign is officially underway. And if you haven't felt the pulse of the riot at America First Field, you're missing out.
Diego Luna, yeah, he'll have a go.
RSL is back. Rally behind Chicho, Diego Luna, and the squad as they embark on a journey to bring the cup back home to Utah.
Chicho, hits it in.
Real Salt Lake. Get in on the action. Secure your tickets today. Visit RSL.com or call 844-REAL-TICKS.
Good morning. Baby, it's a brand new day.
Ready to wake up in a new destination nearly every day with Norwegian Cruise Line? Book today with free second guests to Alaska, Europe, and beyond. Plus, everyone can enjoy their vacation with free unlimited open bar, free specialty dining, and more. Visit ncl.com, call your travel advisor, or 1-888-NCL-CRUISE. Offer ends soon. Norwegian Cruise Line. Ships registry the Bahamas and USA. Restrictions apply.
The rest of my life gonna start today.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Sinclair's Dino Pay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meese.
Delays in the heart of the valley. It's due to an accident northbound to I-15, about 2100 south at the I-8201 junction, blocking a right lane of traffic. The best kept secret is this is the pass. It's a pass for fun for everyone. Now through April 30th, save $20 off every annual pass level. 362 days of fun. Visit thisisthepass.com. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
And our KSL weather, cloudy, south winds today, high in the low 70s. Tomorrow then, rain showers. Saturday, rain and snow showers. And temperatures drop into the 40s for the weekend. Right now, 64 degrees, mostly cloudy. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources.
Inside Sources.
America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, the headlines today, of course, are about President Biden's conversation with Prime Minister Netanyahu, demanding some definitive, specific, concrete steps in terms of getting to a ceasefire, changing the dynamics in terms of the humanitarian aid and the crisis going on inside of Gaza. And we want to get past the headlines and look underneath in terms of the policies and where we're failing and what that means from a humanitarian standpoint. Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
While President Biden issued the clearest and sternest warning, I think, thus far to Benjamin Netanyahu, what happens next will be very fascinating to look at. And in the meantime, there is this escalating humanitarian crisis, and obviously with the death of 7 aid workers who were really on angels' errands there in terms of alleviating suffering. We want to get into the policy around that as we really look at famine looming in Gaza. Really thrilled to have back on the program with us once again Josh Rogan, columnist for the Global Opinion section of the Washington Post, political analyst with CNN. And Josh, welcome back to the show.
Great to be back. Thanks for having me.
So as you watch this play out, great piece today, by the way, as always, great thinking, great writing. And give us kind of your perspective, first kind of 30,000-foot level in terms of where we are in all of this, and then let's get down to the practical tacticals in terms of policy.
Right. Well, where we are is, 6 months into a war that's seen more than 30,000 people killed, of course, 1,200 people 1,500 people or so killed on the Israeli side in the terrorist attack that sparked the war. Hostages are still trapped. The region seems to be at a boiling point. Violence over the Lebanese border, violence in Syria, violence in Yemen, and no clear path out of this crisis. That's the first 30,000-foot view. And then the second part of this is that you layer on the crazy politics of the United States and the crazy politics of Israel. And what you get is, in one sense, a stalemate where everyone is sort of committed to this path that they're on, and nobody wants to blink and nobody wants to say, wait a second, maybe there's a better way to do this thing. And at the same time, it's very clear that the situation is getting worse. There's a famine is imminent, according to the UN. And, the suffering is just really getting out of control. And I think what we saw today from President Biden was an attempt to, one, acknowledge that in the more full-throated way that he has to date, and two, to promise to do something about it, which is a change of policy, but it's not actually doing something about it. It's sort of threatening to do something about it, you could say.
Yeah, and that seems to be the interesting series of mixed messages, I think, from the administration on days. I kind of go back and equate it to that unarmed, British Bobby who's, yelling stop, or I'll yell stop again. And you had on one hand the president, being upset and infuriated, and then, moving forward on, F-16s and bombs and those kinds of things. Do you think today changes that dynamic? And if it does change the dynamic, what do you see as the cracks or the opportunity moments that could come on the horizon?
Right. No, I think today is an important day in seeing how the White House is changing its strategy, because for months, essentially the plan was to say a lot of things about what it wants the Israeli government to do, but never to threaten to use any real leverage. And the only real leverage they have, of course, are the weapons that the United States is supplying. And today they crossed that Rubicon. They put it out there. They said if the Israeli government doesn't do more on the humanitarian front to minimize civilian casualties, and of course this was most illustrated by this week's killing of 7 aid workers with the World Central Kitchen, but it's an ongoing issue that if they don't do more, then the U.S. is going to do something unspecified. And everybody knows what that is, but they don't want to say it out loud. And so that is a pretty big step for them.
Yeah.
But it doesn't get you anywhere. That's my opinion. It doesn't get you to the result that you're going to want, which is that the Israeli government changes its policy. It doesn't seem like they're going to do that. And so what I think we're going to see is an increasing political break between Washington and the Israeli government, but on the ground, actually, not much is going to change in terms of the level of violence.
Yeah. You pointed out a couple of things in your piece that I think are important and worth pursuing, and that is, even if there were just some of the changes, you've mentioned that many of the aid organizations are extremely frustrated by the sometimes arbitrary inspections and that kind of process. Is there anyone or any entity that can take over that inspection process, or is there any way to accelerate what relief, what food, what supplies are in the region actually getting to those who need them?
Right. Of course, the Israeli government claims that there's no limit to the amount of aid that it allows through Gaza, and that it has an inspection process geared towards only military or dual-use military items. But every aid organization on the ground and tons of video and evidence suggests it's just not the case. That the process of inspection is contributing to exacerbating the misery and starvation of, about 1 million people at this point. And that's, is there an alternative to that system? Sure, there's plenty of them that you could think of: an international force, an Arab force, a UN system, a U.S. system. But it practically, that we can't really expect that any of those things are going to happen. So the practical solution is to pressure the Israelis to let more aid flow in so these people don't starve. I think that's essentially what has to happen. And, the only country with that leverage is the United States. And, what my sources in the White House say is that President Biden himself doesn't want to do it. In other words, this policy comes from the president himself. And this is rooted in his deep-seated belief that this is not conditioning aid to Israel is not a place that he wants to go. Yet he's being dragged there by reality, by the politics of it, by the fact that now U.S. credibility and U.S. influence is on the line, and he has that to think of as well. So I think that's why you see them moving ever so slowly towards that eventuality.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. Great insight and perspective as always. Josh Rogan, columnist for the Global Opinion section of the Washington Post, political analyst with CNN. Josh, as always, appreciate your perspective, and I'm sure we'll be talking again as this very slowly continues to undulate along, and hopefully it gets towards ceasefire and hopefully towards relief for those most in need. Josh, thanks for joining us today.
Anytime.
All right, again, that's Josh Rogan from the Washington Post, and it is so complex and complicated. I do think we need to mark today and watch this as a potential hinge point in a lot of this. Does it move towards a ceasefire? Are the demands ratcheted up as it relates to Israel? No one today has been ratcheting up any expectations, by the way, on Hamas and the hostages. And so it's going to be interesting to see the politics of that play out. And in the meantime, how do you get aid to those innocent civilians and those that are suffering inside of Gaza? There's a lot of things where a few little tweaks might just be that hinge point moment. We'll see how that plays out. We'll continue to follow it here on Inside Sources on KSL News Radio. We'll be right back.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson.
Hey everyone, it's Ted from Consumer Cellular, the guy in the orange sweater, and this is your wake-up call. If you're paying too much for wireless service, you don't have to keep having that nightmare. Consumer Cellular has the same fast, reliable coverage as the leading carriers for less. And for a limited time, new customers receive their second month free when they sign up and use promo code MONTHFREE by May 31st. So why keep spending more than you have to? Seriously, wake up and call 1-888-FREEDOM or visit consumercellular.com.
Taxes, fees, and other third-party charges will apply. See website for additional details.
Join Macy's and Trust for Public Land to bring more parks to more people across the country now during Earth Month. Throughout April, you can help turn vacant schoolyards into vibrant parks. Just donate online to Trust for Public Land or round up your Macy's store purchase up to 99 cents and donate the extra change. Give back today and find out how we're helping people and the planet thrive together at Macys.com/purpose.
Should work-life balance be the law?
We feel this sense of pressure that if the boss gets a hold of us, we better be ready to respond ASAP.
California thinks so.
A new bill would give employees a legal right to ignore calls and text messages.
I see no downside to this.
David Dujanovic, fuel your days with conversation.
I don't think we'd be talking about this if bosses hadn't long ago jumped the shark.
Weekday mornings 9 to noon on KSL News Radio.
Hello, Spring. This is your friend, Adventure. You've been on my mind, and I'm wondering where you've been. Weather's warming, and word on the street is you're looking for riders to enjoy Cedar City Brine Head's spectacular trails? Well, I'm told Three Peaks Recreation and Parawam's Evil Water Trail System are the bomb. Or perhaps you've changed. Maybe you're more into hiking? Kolob Canyon or Thor's Hammer Trail make a perfect meetup place. Oh, and don't forget Cedar City's spectacular views accompanied by disc golf at the Thunderbird Garden Course. Listen, I've always been here. I still like the same things. Spring skiing, tubing, but I'm more mature now. My interests have expanded. There's Cedar City's Southern Utah Museum of Art, strolls downtown, fine dining or shopping. I'm more interesting than you know. Let's connect and rekindle our relationship, starting in the spot we always enjoy. Cedar City Brine Head. Look me up at visitcedarcity.com. Your old friend, Adventure.
Utah homeowners, it's time to roll up your sleeves and dive back into your backyard projects this spring with Geneva Rock. Whether you're planning to lengthen your patio for barbecues or extend your driveway for that new RV, boat, or new toy, Geneva Rock's ready-mix concrete is your go-to solution. Visit GenevaRock.com/DIY to get started. Geneva can even introduce you to a licensed contractor for the job. Your project starts here. Visit GenevaRock.com/DIY today.
Are you stressing about your IRS tax problems? Have you received notices from the IRS threatening to garnish your wages, levy your bank accounts, or seize your property? You need an ally. Allies Tax Relief has tax attorneys and enrolled agents that are ready to fight for you. They have saved millions for taxpayers just like you. Allies Tax Relief can help put a stop to IRS collections and, most importantly, negotiate your tax debt. Here's Brenda, a happy client of Allies Tax Relief.
I owed the IRS around $57,000, and they're about to start garnishing my paychecks. I heard a commercial on the radio about Allies Tax Relief, so I thought I'd give them a call. After a day, they were able to at least stop the garnishments, and after a few months of negotiations, I walked away owing the IRS only $301.
If you owe the IRS, call Allies Tax Relief right now for your free consultation. Call 800-230-5174. 800-230-5174. That's 800-230-5174.
Advanced Window Products. Factory direct. Affordable windows. Call today. They're on their way. Financing available. Save now, pay later. AdvancedWindows.com.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, it's the Bees, not the A's, who will be using the new baseball stadium in Daybreak next season. Second, Utah's Attorney General says a bar that posted a sign saying it would not serve Zionists did not discriminate against any patrons. And third, the president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has a Facebook message for those planning to watch a general conference this weekend. Right now, 64 degrees, mostly cloudy in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Get deeper insights on the news from Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today, as always. Well, as Speaker of the House Mike Johnson is continuing to work on getting more aid passed for Ukraine and possibly Israel and Taiwan. There's a very delicate dance that he is engaged in that includes both Democrats and then a lot of Republicans. In the meantime, the White House has been particularly absent, or quiet, I should say, in terms of letting the Speaker do his job. But we want to get underneath that and look forward in terms of what we might expect once they return from the current recess. And, of course, we always turn to Jennifer Haberkorn from Politico. She's a White House reporter for Politico. And Jen, welcome back to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Boyd. Great to be with you.
All right, so let's get underneath all of this. The White House has been noticeable by their absence in a lot of these conversations around Ukraine aid. And give us a sense, what's going on behind the scenes there?
Yeah, the White House has been trying to get Ukraine aid passed for months, and I wouldn't say that they've been absent in these conversations. In fact, they've been talking to Speaker Johnson's office throughout the 2-week congressional recess that's just wrapping up tomorrow. But what is most noticeable, to me at least, is the lack of they're not punching him in the face rhetorically. Typically, when the parties are very far apart in these negotiations, they're kind of lobbing rhetorical bombs at each other. And we're not seeing that right now, which I think is actually a sign that the talks are moving forward. When you're negotiating with someone face to face, you're not going to come out publicly against their position. And I thought what was most noteworthy was that Mike Johnson, the Speaker, went on Fox News on Sunday and talked about 3 things that he wants to see in a bill. And the White House really didn't come out publicly against any of those except one, which could be read as a sign that, there could be some movement. I mean, the White House, of course, has maintained publicly that they want the House to pass the Senate's bill that funded Ukraine, Taiwan, and Israel. And Johnson is saying, we'll consider doing that, but I want to see these other things in there. He wants to see it funded by seizing the assets of Russian oligarchs, which is kind of, politically sounds great. He also wants to see the Biden administration lift its moratorium on liquefied gas exports, which is important to his state of Louisiana. And they want to see the aid to Ukraine converted into a loan, which is an idea that former President Donald Trump has really touted.
Yeah, and as you look at each of those components to it, I do think it's interesting. The oligarchs seizing those assets, like you said, it sounds great, and everybody can cheer. It's a great line for a speech, for sure. The practicality of actually executing it gets pretty complicated. The natural gas one is interesting, too, not just for Louisiana, but also in terms of the funds that provides for Vladimir Putin in that perspective. And then I think the other, in terms of doing that as a loan, again, also might be good in theory, but I don't think anyone expects that would be paid back in the end anyway.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And the challenge with a loan is that you would be straddling a country that is in the middle of war and then hopefully rebuilding from war with a ton of debt that would ruin their credit rating when, to your point, no one really expects that money to be repaid. So again, it sounds good, and Republicans have to embrace it because Donald Trump likes the idea, but it really seems kind of implausible. It's also easier to do humanitarian aid through a loan, but much more difficult when it comes to military aid.
Yeah. And I think you're right in pointing out that I do think the administration has showed great restraint, not just political maneuvering or posturing. I think they've showed some restraint, and I think that's worth noting. And I think you nailed it in saying that it's probably because they're making some progress in terms of those negotiations, that they're choosing not to score the political point when they clearly could, but showing that restraint to get to better policy.
Yeah, exactly. And, you think about Speaker Johnson's position. I mean, he's going to be down to a 1-vote margin, and he has everyone in his caucus, from members who, are very pro-Ukraine, want to get the money out the door yesterday, to at least one member, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is trying to kick him out of his seat over this. and everybody in between. So he has to figure out a package that can keep all those people happy. And of course, if and when the bill comes to the floor, there's a great assumption that many Democrats will support it, and that is certainly true. But not only does this bill have to pass, but for all intents and purposes, he wants to hang on to his job. And so if he passes this, with the majority of Democratic votes, that's just going to, encourage those folks who want to throw him out of his job to do so more quickly.
Yeah, I think
so. He has to keep all those in mind.
Yeah, and it goes back to that old saying: if you try to please everybody, you please nobody, and you usually lose your job in the process. And to me, that's going to be one of the most interesting things to watch when they reconvene next week. One, what does he put on the floor? And then to the point you alluded to, Jennifer, that the numbers will be incredibly telling in terms of how many people actually vote. Does it get over 300? Is it mostly the Democrats? What is the mix and make of that? Because that will send a message both to the Senate in terms of where they are, but also to the White House in terms of what comes next.
Absolutely. And, if the House passes its own bill, this is going to have to go back to the Senate. Which, of course, the Senate doesn't want to deal with that again, but they, most likely would have to. The majority of them want to get funding to Ukraine. But I think we also have to think, too, about the recent actions in Israel. And, there's been long simmering concerns among Democrats about Israel's actions in Gaza, and the, deaths of the aid workers has only refueled that concern. And I think, one thing that I'm going to be thinking about in the next few days is, that large Democratic vote tally in the House, is that going to be reduced if there aren't conditions on that aid? Which, again, anyone who wants this bill to pass does not want to reopen more of it to negotiation, but they might have to.
Yeah. Oh, that's so fascinating. This is why we have you on the show, Jennifer, because you get us to that point. Because the what is taking place in Israel, and of course the phone call today between Benjamin Netanyahu and President Biden, and a lot of those demands there. What happens if Speaker Johnson puts a new bill on the floor, and it does include aid to Israel? One, does it get passed with enough Democratic votes in the House? But then what does that do in the Senate for those in the Senate who are struggling with Israel at the moment?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that yet, but that's the same question that I have right now. And I've started to put out some calls to sources to try to nail that down, because I think that could be a real issue. And keep in mind, because of Johnson's small majority in the House, he likely would have to pass this under this special procedure that would require more than 270 votes. So he's going to have to get a large number of Republican votes and a large number of Democratic votes. I don't think at this point there's a risk that he would not be able to do that if the outlines are generally what we know. But that could get complicated quickly if Democrats feel like Biden is not doing enough, or if Israel invades Rafah, which is has become something of a red line for Biden and many Democrats. So it's certainly something that I'm going to be watching, but it's just a bit murky right now.
Yeah, for sure. And then the ultimate crystal ball,
to say the least.
Yeah, if the House passes a version and the Senate passes it and they take it to the president's desk and things continue to escalate, especially since the president has sort of redrawn the red line, but it sounds like a pretty solid red line at the moment. Then is the president going to say, well, I'll sign this because it has a lot of Ukraine funding, but it's also got aid to Israel, and then does that become one more mixed message that the president has to deal with, both policy-wise but also politically?
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and it's going to be hard to see how everybody has quite a web to weave on this one. And, you think about the Ukraine funding, the Israel funding, Johnson's future. It gets complicated very fast.
Very, very fast. Well, we'll continue to watch it. I know you'll be continuing to work your sources and giving us perspective there. Jennifer Haberkorn, White House reporter for Politico. She writes about the relationship between President Biden, the administration, and Capitol Hill. And right now, that is the middle of the storm. So, Jennifer, thanks so much for giving us some insight there. We look forward to having you back real soon.
Great to talk with you, Boyd. Take care.
All right. That's Jennifer Haberkorn from Politico. I always think better about this after going through this with Jennifer, because she helps me connect those dots, and I always get at least one thing in there that I hadn't thought about before, what the dynamics might be. And I think the phone call today between President Biden and Benjamin Netanyahu makes everything a little more complicated when the House and the Senate come back from their recess next week. Does the package for Ukraine also include the Israel funding, or does that dynamic shift? So many things to be watching there. We'll continue to watch it all. We've got you covered here at KSL News Radio. We'll step aside for some bottom-of-the-hour news. More Inside Sources coming up next.
It's 2:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top local story this hour. The president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints called his own advancing age, as well as that of other church leaders, a cause for celebration. This was in a Facebook post this morning. President Russell M. Nelson said he thanks the Lord every day for the privilege of still being here with you, even as he approaches his 100th birthday. He says those watching this weekend's General Conference sessions may see some general authorities speak while sitting down or pre-recording their messages. He urges church members to listen to the messages with open hearts and minds. KSL News Radio will carry all the sessions of General Conference this weekend, along with the special programming next to the sessions on Saturday and Sunday. A person was struck and killed on I-15 this morning while apparently changing a tire. Utah Highway Patrol Sergeant Andrew Battenfield says if you get a flat tire on the freeway, you need to turn on your hazard lights and move to the side of the road.
You want to pick an area that is well lit, an area that traffic can see you from a distance, and a wide shoulder.
Battenfield says if you're close to an exit, you might want to sacrifice the tire to take the exit to get to someplace safer, then call 911 to ask for help. Try to avoid debris on the shoulders that can cause more flat tires. He says because Utah doesn't require safety inspections any longer, it becomes the responsibility of the car owner to maintain the tires, and he suggests checking them every month for wear. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average down at the close of trading now, 530 points today, where the NASDAQ was down to 228, the S&P 500 down 64. And our KSL News Radio looks like we're going to see the clouds building up and the rain and snow moving in for the weekend. That's next. KSL News Time, 2:31.
We hope you have the right app on your phone for news. You probably have dozens.
But the KSL News Radio app, well, it makes our live stream super easy.
Plus, our talk shows are right there as podcast for your workday.
That's the app for KSL News Radio.
Hi, this is Julie from the Visitors Bureau in Logan, and things are looking up. The sun is out, and you should be too. Spring break is just around the corner, so book your stay, pack your bags, and come and play. We're kicking off spring break with the annual Original Baby Animal Days at the American West Heritage Center. You'll be spread out over 160 acres of beautiful scenery while you pet all the baby animals like lambs, goats, piglets, bunnies, and chicks. March 28th through the 30th also features exotic animals. You can see baby bears from Yellowstone Bear World April 3rd through the 6th, which is also when Baby Animal Days combines with the annual Mountain Man Rendezvous. Watch demonstrations like flint and steel fire starting, bullet making, and leatherworking and scrimshaw. Wait, do you even know what that is? It doesn't matter. Come and see at the American West Heritage Center. Logan has so many great things to do. Come for spring break or anytime you need a break. Vacation in Logan. Just get in the car. ExploreLogan.com. ExploreLogan.com.
This joyful sound is the No More Chemo bell at Intermountain Health St. George Hospital. And it means that Sarah Parker beat cancer. It also means her doctor spotted it early enough to treat, and that her oncologist helped her fight it every step of the way. It means that her nurse helped her keep track of medicines, and that a case manager made the whole experience just a little bit easier. Every time we hear that bell, it reminds us that all things are possible when we work together. It reminds us of the power of we. Intermountain Health.
Hey guys, do you know your T-level? Revive Men's Health here in Salt Lake City is helping you take that first step toward better health and enhanced intimacy with a free testosterone level test, exam, and consultation. Plus, for this month only, qualified patients can kickstart their treatment with a free supply of ED medication. Call Revive Men's Health Salt Lake City at 801-263-7777. That's 801-263-7777. Or visit ReviveMen'sHealth.com.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meese.
Crews are wrapping up this accident northbound I-15, about 2100 south at the I-80 201 junction. It's been out of traffic on the shoulder, but we still have some residual heavy and slow traffic back to Murray. Plan your special evening out in one of Salt Lake's most unique dining, 5 Alls in Foothill. 5 courses, 5-star service and dining. 5alls.com, 5alls.com. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
And our KSL weather, cloudy with south winds today, a high in the low 70s. Rain showers tomorrow with rain and snow showers on Saturday. 66 degrees right now. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, as electric vehicles continue to improve and gain traction in today's car market, the government is eyeing their own contribution of industrial policy, of course, to either speed the transition away from gas vehicles towards electric power, or to just insert some more red tape and rules along the way. Some of the problems as this continues to move forward is many times the proposed rules don't really match the data or the analysis. But you could do that in an agency, and that's why we are supposed to have people in Congress doing a lot of this work. But we want to dig into it and look at what is it that's happening at the EPA, and what these new regulations are, and if implemented, what the impact will be, and how do you actually get to those kinds of decisions if you're in the room where those decisions are happening. Benjamin Zeiker's a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, where he works on energy and environmental policy. And Benjamin, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
So as you started in your piece in The Hill, you talked about federal regulations before they get implemented. They have to be justified with some analysis and some data. So first, give us a sense of what is this rule that's been proposed, and then what's the data actually telling us about why we need it?
Well, the rule is called the multi-pollutant rule for emissions from light vehicles and trucks. And it's for the period 2027 through 2055, and it basically is a sharp limitation on the emissions of carbon dioxide from those vehicles, and the limits are so stringent on a fleet-wide basis that it effectively outlaws the sale of internal combustion engine vehicles, even though EPA claims that they will still have about a 29 or 30% market share by 2055, which I think is ludicrous, but that's what EPA claims. And the whole purpose is to force the market to shift toward electric vehicles away from conventional vehicles.
And so as you look at that, again, this is a classic Washington process. You even mentioned in your piece that it weighed in at a whopping 1,181 pages, along with 884 pages of regulatory impact analysis.
Right.
And so as you break this down in terms of what is it that we actually need and what are we supposed to do, this is one of those that I always question, because if the agency does this and then a constituent, let's say of a United States senator, comes and says, hey, this is hurting my business, or this is hurting me or my family or my community, the senator can just shrug their shoulders and say, hey, I just voted for clean air, take it up with the EPA.
Well, Congress does have the power under the Congressional Review Act to pass a bill forcing the EPA to withdraw the regulation in question. But then, in this case, even if that were to pass Congress, I think that's almost impossible given the makeup of both the House and the Senate. President Biden would veto it, and so that's really not a realistic option. The other, much more realistic option is to challenge the rule in court which is being done already by a number of groups and companies on several grounds, one of which, just to pick an example, is the major questions doctrine that the Supreme Court established in West Virginia versus the EPA, in which the court said that agencies cannot enact major changes in economic processes. I'm kind of paraphrasing here. Without explicit and clear direction from Congress. In other words, there has to be statutory authority for the agency to do what it's trying to do. That's how the Clean Power Plan, which attempted to force the industry to shift wholesale away from natural gas and coal and conventional generation to wind and solar power, that was thrown out by the court under the major questions doctrine. So I think that that's likely to happen, but it may take some time.
Yeah, and that is always the process, and to me, it's part of the brokenness of what's happening inside of Washington, D.C. You get either the broad brush instructions from Congress, and the agency exceeds those, or just does their own thing, and then someone has to file a court lawsuit, and then the lawsuit has to work its way through the courts, and ultimately we end up at the Supreme Court, which I think is part of the reason the Supreme Court has been so politicized, is because Congress keeps abdicating authority to the agencies. Agencies are taking it. Somebody files a lawsuit, and we end up back in the same dance. Is there anything as it relates to this one and the EPA in terms of any legislative fix or anything that's going to change the dynamic, or are we just going to have to see this one play through the courts as well?
No, Congress in principle could reverse it. Congress could leave it in place but defund its enforcement, which is not nearly as good, but it would be effective. Congress, has lots of powers that it has not been exercising in quite a while, and that is unfortunate. As you put it, the abdication of law and regulatory making to the executive branch, which is not what the founding fathers envisioned in the Constitution.
Yeah, no question about that. Benjamin Zikert, Senior Fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. Great perspective here, and this is, again, just another example of how we shouldn't be doing it, and how sometimes you end up cooking the books to justify whatever the solution you put forward. That doesn't always turn out well for the citizens in the end. Benjamin, thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Again, that's Benjamin Zikert, Senior Fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. And you've heard me talk about this before, and I just want to go back and unpack it one more time, that this is the pattern. This is the broken pattern that we need to stop. And so, again, the EPA is putting forward a new rule not based on good data and science and all of those things, but they looked at the numbers. They came up with their own analysis. They issue an 1,181-page rule with 884 pages of regulatory analysis, and already lawsuits are being filed because it wasn't done by Congress. And so there's real impact there. And so the rules aren't coming because of good information. It's either good politics or good positioning. And then the moment that this happens, then somebody files a lawsuit, and then it works its way through the court. And we end up in this awful, horrible dance that happens every time Congress either doesn't act at all or acts in ways that are so superficial that they just hand off and abdicate their authority to the executive branch. And the example here is a good one with the EPA, that Congress is going to declare we shall have clean air. Everybody votes for it. Everybody cheers because everybody's for clean air. And there's a big headline, and everybody gets a social media moment and a big group hug, kumbaya moment. And then if you actually read the text of the bill, it says we hereby bequeath to the EPA the ability to decide what all these rules are and how to enforce them and what the penalties are. And so they do that, which is what we're watching today. And then a voter, a constituent, a good American citizen is impacted negatively by the rule, and they don't think it's fair because it's not. And so what do? They file a lawsuit. Or they go to their member of Congress and say, this is killing me. This is hurting my business. This is not good for my family or my community. And the member of Congress can say, hey, I just voted for clean air. If you got a problem, go talk to the EPA. But the EPA is not elected. You can't fire them. And so then the lawsuits move and we keep in the same cycle. But most of this happens because Congress abdicates authority rather than getting the job all the way done, which is the job they signed up to do. We'll step aside for one last break. More Inside Sources coming up next.
Believe it or not, most small businesses don't have a 401k. If you don't have a 401k, you are missing out on the greatest wealth creation tool ever created. I'm Jeff Jr. with Trajan Wealth, and many 401ks are overpriced for the employer, have expensive and underperforming investment options, and have tedious administrative provisions. Not at Trajan Wealth. We can set up a 401k for a company for only $8 per employee, a $65 per plan fee, plus a small advisory fee. That's right, not thousands or even the tens of thousands you've been quoted. And do it all in less time than it takes to sit in traffic. If you have 5 or more employees, these 401ks will help you attract and retain top talent. And if you're an employee and don't have a 401k, tell your boss. Call Trajan Wealth today. Call 801-899-7600. That's 801-899-7600.
Services offered through a third-party partner.
Held over due to popular demand. Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Save thousands on hot tubs and swim spas. It's a major manufacturer's liquidation of hundreds of in-stock spas. Utah State Fair Park. Hot tubs discounted 40 to 80% to the lowest possible price, starting at $29.99. Free professional delivery. Take possession tomorrow, next week, next month, or next season. The Hot Tub and Swim Spa Sale. Utah State Fair Park. Shop over a dozen models of swim spas from 11 feet to over 19 feet. Swim spas offer low-impact exercise, active family fun, unsurpassed relaxation, and installation in one day. The Hot Tub and Swim Spa Sale. Everything must go. Free parking, free admission. You can't afford to miss this. It's a major manufacturer's liquidation of hundreds of in-stock spas. Friday, noon to 8 p.m. Saturday, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Sunday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. The Hot Tub and Swim Spa Sale. Utah State Fair Park. Visit hottubandSwimSpaSale.com.
It's a mystery where Old Spice finds its amazing scents like Himalayan sea salt, but I'm thrilled they have because no other body wash exfoliates and moisturizes 24/7 like Old Spice Gentleman's Himalayan sea salt body wash. Now, if only there was a mountain range separating the Indian subcontinent from the Tibetan plateau where I could hide my Old Spice and keep my family from stealing it, my impossibly smooth skin will finally be safe.
Without the ones like you, who work tirelessly to keep things running, everything would suddenly stop. Hospitals, factories, schools, and power plants, they all depend on you. No matter the weather, emergency, or time of day, you're the ones who get it done. At Grainger, we're here for you with professional-grade industrial supplies. Count on real-time product availability and fast delivery. Call, clickgrainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
It's been a rough winter for sure, but visitors are flocking to Box Elder County. Our feathered visitors, that is. Bear River Migratory Bird Refuge is busy hosting swans to swallows, geese to grebes. The spring migration is in full swing, and all that's missing is you. Box Elder County really is for the birds. Just a short 60 minutes north of Salt Lake, Box Elder County is the perfect place to make memories and celebrate spring, along with spending time with our feathered friends. You'll experience amazing restaurants and unique shopping. Come take a soak at Crystal Hot Springs, home to the highest mineral content of any natural hot springs in the world. Let the winter melt away as you relax and rejuvenate. Take in a theater performance at one of the live theaters or visit one of the fine museums. Visitors really are chirping all about Box Elder County. Check out visitboxeldercounty.com and see why Box Elder County is for the birds. That's boxeldercounty.com.
Getting help with electrical repairs is easier than you think. All you have to do is call Any Hour Services or schedule an appointment at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
This Monday Tax Tip is brought to you by Susan Spears, CEO of the Utah Association of CPAs.
In 2021, Congress passed the Corporate Transparency Act. This law creates a new beneficial ownership information reporting requirement as part of the U.S. government's efforts to make it harder for bad actors to hide behind anonymous entities as part of illicit financial activities. In the U.S., it is estimated that 32 million companies will be required to make this filing to the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, FinCEN. To find out if your organization is exempt, contact your CPA.
Get the most out of your income tax preparation when you hire a CPA. Go to uacpa.org to find a CPA that's right for you. That's uacpa.org. uacpa.org. Listen to KSL on Monday for more tax tips from the Utah Association of CPAs.
Hey guys, do you know your T-level? Revive Men's Health here in Salt Lake City is helping you take that first step toward better health and enhanced intimacy with a free testosterone level test, exam, and consultation. Plus, for this month only, qualified patients can kickstart their treatment with a free supply of ED medication. Revive's customized ED treatments can provide immediate results, restore blood flow naturally, and even bring spontaneity back into your love life. With both in-person and telemedicine appointments available, plus free shipping directly to you, Revive takes the hassle out of treating low T and ED. Having an optimal testosterone level can change your whole life, and it starts with knowing your T level. Take that first step and book your free testosterone test, free exam, and free consultation, and kickstart your treatment with a free supply of ED medication this month only. Call Revive Men's Health Salt Lake City at 801-263-7777. That's 801-263-7777 or visit ReviveMen'sHealth.com.
Introducing Peach Doors and Windows. Are you ready to upgrade your home with stunning new doors but are overwhelmed with how to begin? Peach Doors is here to make the entire process smooth and stress-free. Visit their showroom to see their wide selection of wood doors, durable fiberglass, energy-efficient aluminum, oversized glass bifold doors, and so much more. It's not just about looks, it's about durability and security to protect what matters most. Let them help you find the perfect match for your home, budget, and personal style. Visit their showroom and see for yourself. No pushy sales tactics, only guidance from their experienced staff. No inflated markups just to offer so-called discounts. See their 5-star reviews where customers rate them on their attention to detail through every step of the sale and installation process. Amazing home transformations begin with windows and doors. Serving Logan to St. George, just Google Peach Building to see for yourself.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, in a Facebook post looking forward to this weekend's General Conference, the president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints noted his own advancing age, along with other church leaders, who call it a cause for celebration. Second, a highway patrol trooper suggests if you're near a freeway exit and you get a flat, it might be worthwhile to sacrifice that tire and wheel to get off the freeway safely. And third, the Oakland A's will not be sharing a stadium with the Salt Lake Bees in Utah. Instead, they'll play in Sacramento. 66 degrees, mostly cloudy in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today. As always, I am Boyd Matheson. As we round out the program today, if you've missed any of the program, you want to go back, we had a string of just some of our best guests. We kicked it off with Jay Evenson talking about writing the future, and what a challenge it is. But I'm telling you, everybody should do that. If you want a real challenge, write the future. Write a letter 50 years down the road or 100 years down the road, and see how you do there. I have actually found it's way easier to poke holes at people who lived in the past who can't speak for themselves than it is to try to project something forward to the people of the future, and try to write about the big issues of our day. And just know that whoever reads that letter of yours 100 years from now, they're going to know if you were right or wrong. They're going to know if we solve the big issues of the day, because they will be living in the history, the future that we create for them. It's a pretty humbling task, and grateful to Jay Evenson for joining us to break that down. We also had Sam Abrams, who's also just always brilliant on the program, and especially as we talk about young people and his work as he teaches political science and the ability to get to the real issues. And I think Sam is really onto something in terms of the disconnect with young people. And it's not just that they're frustrated or they're not engaged or they don't care. It's 2 things. One, it's nobody's tapped them on the shoulder and invited them to be part of something. Now, while the Biden campaign did benefit from younger voters, it was helpful to the current president when he was running in 2020. His status with younger voters has continually gone lower and lower underwater in the last 3 years. So lots of work to be done there. Many of those young voters who voted for President Biden in 2020 were ready to step up and step in. And then they never got the call. They never got tasked with anything. It kind of went back to the old guard, status quo, business as usual. And a lot of those young voters said, it's really not worth it. Really not there. We've also talked extensively on the show about the fact that you've got these mega fundraisers going on for both President Biden and former President Trump. And for young voters, that is so far removed from their reality. You looked at the glamour and glitz of President Biden's New York event, which featured Bill Clinton and Barack Obama on the stage with a host of other celebrities, and $250,000 a plate. That's the most expensive rubber chicken you're ever going to eat. But to most voters, young voters in particular, that is so disconnected from reality. They're worried about student loans. They're worried about paying tuition. They're worried about paying their rent. They're worried about whether or not they'll ever be able to buy a house. And they're wondering if their version of the American dream is a reality anymore. And so there's a real big disconnect. And then, of course, former President Trump is going to outdo that with a $33 million evening at Mar-a-Lago in Florida this weekend. And it'll be the same kinds of things. And so to the young voter, it's like these people are not caring about what my issues are. If they're out hobnobbing with the rich and famous, that's not the world that I live in every day. One other thing that Sam Abrams mentioned that I thought was really important, and I think this is an interesting bridge component to all of this, and that is he said, in addition to the fact that there is this disconnect, that no one's tapped these young voters on the shoulder and said, come get in the game. We need you. We want you. Not only is there a place for you here, but we need you to play and play big. But there's also the challenge that many of these Gen Z voters in particular, while they have lots of thoughts about things and they understand how to use the social media world, they don't know how to organize. And part of that you can say pandemic related, part of that's digital devices. They have not learned to connect and to organize. As Sam and I were talking about that, it struck me that they don't have to organize. Everything's organized for them. Play dates when they're little kids, their school schedule, all handled by the helicopter parent, or everything else is set in terms of what teams they're on, what music lessons they're going to, who their tutor is, and it's all organized. It's all pre-packaged and pre-done. They don't have to do the old school way of, hey, can I call 6 of my buddies so we can play 3-on-3 basketball at the park? That's just not happening. Or can I organize a group to get together and go out to dinner? They're just not doing that. And so there's a skill set that's also been lost in the generation. And that's an interesting thing. And so it had me thinking of what are the other skills that this generation may not have that actually might help them raise their voice politically and on important issues to them. I think there's many of them. I think just writing a good letter is another one of those lost arts and lost skills in the world. If everything is done in a text message or a TikTok video, your ability to articulate a message in a way that's going to inspire and motivate and get people to act, that's a test. But not a lot of people are learning how to do that anymore. And so I do think there's a skill set gap as well as an invitation gap as it relates to getting younger voters to really engage. And they will play a huge role. There's always the myth of this is going to be the year that all the young voters show up and show out and they're going to decide the election. I think they will play a major role in the election, but it may be the absence of their presence that makes the difference for either President Biden or former President Trump. Because if they just decide not to show up, definitely hurts President Biden. They were with him in a much larger way back in 2020. The Republicans still seem to be disconnected or disinterested in really engaging the young people in a meaningful way. So nothing's really happening on that front. So both political parties are struggling with the young voters. If they all stay home, that's a sad day for the Republic. It's not good for the future that hopefully we're all writing together, because that is the job of every citizen. All right, that wraps it up for us on Inside Sources today here on KSL News Radio. I'm Boyd Matheson. Thanks for joining us. And as always, as you go out into the world today, make sure you see something that inspires, say something that uplifts, and do something that makes a difference.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Good afternoon, 3 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Jeff Kaplan. It is windy. It is 68 degrees. KSL's top story. The announcement shouldn't be much of a surprise, according to just everyone in the sports world. The Oakland A's were never coming to Salt Lake. This morning, the MLB team committed to Sacramento for the next 3 years. Sacktown sportscaster Carmichael Dave says, "No offense intended, Utah." Utah civic leaders were hoping to lure the A's here till the stadium is ready in Vegas, but in the end, it was all about the money. If the A's moved too far, they'd lose their $60 million TV contract. So what does this do for Utah's hopes for a team to call our own? KSL News Radio's Amy Kobabe is live with that part of the story.
Jeff, hope is still very much alive. Utah is still in a great spot for expansion, according to KSL sports anchor Sam Farnsworth.
And it sounds
Farnsworth also tells Utah's New News that there's nothing about this decision that reflects negatively on Salt Lake. The Larry H. Miller Company is also remaining optimistic. A statement reads that they are fully committed to bringing an MLB expansion team to Salt Lake. They go on to say that they will continue to demonstrate that they have an ideal market here. And remember, the Miller Group isn't fighting this alone. The Utah legislature has already approved a bill to fund the building of an MLB stadium. Reporting live, Amy Kobabe, KSL News Radio.
Thank you, Amy. KSL News Time 3:02. Utah's only competition-level wheelchair basketball team is heading east. They're going to play for the national championship.
The Utah Rush are made up of students ages 14 to 18 who took their passion for basketball, worked tirelessly on their skills with the support of coaches at NeuroWorks in Sandy, and fought their way into the National Wheelchair Basketball Championship Tournament in Virginia.
These kids, when they go out and they play like they're at practice just with their friends, they can beat anybody in this country.
That was assistant coach Casey Black, who's on his 8th season, helping these players realize anything is possible. Players like senior Jackson Meyer.
It's really true when people say that hard work pays off. Let's go win a national championship.
Eric Cabrera, KSL News Radio.
KSL News Time 3:02. President Biden calls for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. Maria Chaleos is live at the KSL National News Desk.
Jeff, the president telling Israel's prime minister he must take immediate concrete steps to protect civilian lives. Secretary of State Antony Blinken repeating the U.S. position following the airstrike that killed 7 humanitarian aid workers.
This week's horrific attack on the World Central Kitchen was not the first such incident. It must be the last.
The president telling the Israeli prime minister future U.S. support depends on new steps to protect civilians and aid workers. A setback for former President Trump in his classified documents case. The judge has ruled Mr. Trump can't argue he's immune to charges under the Presidential Records Act. Meantime, a judge in Georgia has also turned down an attempt by Mr. Trump's attorneys to have a racketeering indictment thrown out. His attorneys argued his conduct after the election amounted to political speech protected by the First Amendment. And relatives of the late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. held ceremonies in multiple cities. From the KSL National News Desk, I'm Maria Chaleos, KSL News Radio.
Well, it's happened again. A man was killed while changing a tire on I-15 early this morning, 6 a.m. It was still dark.